Baroo raised $3.5 million and died, killed by a launch that went perfectly. 70% adoption in its first building, dead 4 years later. Today on Startup Talks, the startup its own success killed. So the company is Baroo, a pet care service founded by Hyde in Boston in mid-2014. The name comes from dog behavior. A baroo is that head tilt a dog does when it's listening closely to its owner.
That's a good name, actually. It tells you exactly what the brand is about. Attentiveness, closeness, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And the service matched that promise. High-touch care, meaning dog walking, grooming, feeding, home check-ins, social play sessions with other pets. Not just someone grabbing the leash for 20 minutes.
When you say high touch, you mean genuinely personalized, knowing the dog, knowing the routine, knowing the owner's preferences.
Right. The whole pitch was quality over convenience, and Hyde was not a first-time founder. Baroo was her second startup. She deliberately wanted to avoid VC pressure and build sustainably, from profit to profit.
Quick aside before we go deeper. We're building a library of startup autopsies here, one real dead company at a time, so you can skip the $70 million lessons the hard way. If you're building something right now, you should probably be subscribed. Anyway.
She also brought in co-founder Meg Rice, who had been COO at her previous company, and in early 2014, they raised $1.2 million from angel investors, not VCs. Angels give you money on a promise. VCs come with reporting cycles and a board watching every move.
So the plan was reach profitability in Boston first, then expand using their own cash. No venture money, no one else's agenda in the room.
That was the plan, and it was a good plan. Keep that in mind because the whole story is about her walking away from it. Their original concept was a corporate pet daycare inside office buildings. They called it Bright Horizons for Pets. Bright Horizons is a company that runs employer-sponsored childcare, so the idea was to copy that model for dogs.
So the employer subsidizes pet care as a workplace benefit. That's actually an interesting idea.
It sounds great on paper, but the MVP, the minimum test version, was 25 Harvard employees, and it died immediately. Nobody wanted to pay $20 for pet care at the office.
Why not? If you love your dog and you're already at the office, it seems convenient.
Because in theory, you want to see your dog during the day. In practice, you don't want to drive it into work. Love is comfortable at home. Commuting with a dog is a different story entirely.
Fair point. The idea assumed a behavior that people don't actually have.
So they pivot. New concept. Rent space in the basements of residential apartment buildings and offer pet care right where people live. Walk the dog in the morning, drop it off downstairs, get in your car, come back, pick it up. No cross-city trips.
That's genuinely elegant. The friction almost disappears.
And building managers were interested too, because a third of tenants move out every year, and a pet daycare makes the building stickier. So there are two customers here, the building that wants the amenity and the pet owners who use the service.
You need to convince both.
Exactly. And to test it, Baroo surveyed 250 pet owners at a local festival. 80% said they were unhappy with their current dog walker and would try Baroo.
That's a strong signal, or at least it looks like one.
Hyde herself spotted the flaw later. She said, "This was encouraging, but I should have asked whether they were ready to switch. Switching costs in this business are very high. Someone already knows your pet and your daily routine."
Right. Saying you're unhappy and actually firing your current walker are two very different things. And dog owners at a festival are the most enthusiastic, agreeable crowd you'll ever find.
Exactly. The survey measured enthusiasm for the idea, not willingness to switch, and that gap is where the whole thing starts to go wrong. Because of that gap, the launch location mattered enormously, and they picked one that lied to them. Ink Block, a brand new luxury complex, 315 units, trendy Boston neighborhood. 60% of residents had pets, and 70% of those used Baroo.
Those are remarkable numbers. That's a huge penetration rate for a new service.
Hyde looked at those numbers and concluded, if it works here, it'll work everywhere. That was the mistake, because that launch was an anomaly, and it was an anomaly for 3 reasons that all happened to hit at once.
Which makes it almost impossible to see, because it just feels like it's working.
Start with the building itself. It was brand new, so every resident moved in at the same time, which means nobody had a dog walker yet. The switching cost Hyde had already identified as the killer, the thing she worried about, simply didn't exist here, because there was nothing to switch from.
So the one barrier she knew mattered was invisible in the exact place she chose to prove the model.
And on top of that, a big chunk of the units were occupied by a Hollywood film crew on a long shoot. They had pets, no free time, and generous daily expense allowances, so they were the perfect customer and completely atypical at the same time.
A film crew on per diems is not your average Boston tenant.
And then, the weather finished the job. That month, Boston got nearly 94 inches of snow, about 240 centimeters in 30 days. Nobody wanted to walk their own dog, so Baroo was serving every household multiple times a day from day one.
So they skipped the entire warm-up phase. Normally you spend months slowly building demand. They went straight to full capacity, but only because 3 flukes stacked up.
And here's Hyde's own reflection. We didn't realize this was a false signal. Instead, we decided, if we can work through a winter like that, we can handle anything.
Which is survivor bias, where you look only at what came out alive and assume it's the norm. You never go back and study why it actually survived.
Exactly. When your first experiment succeeds, you generalize. You don't run extra analysis on the conditions that made it work, because why would you? It worked. Word spread fast. Other building managers started calling Baroo directly, and the moment it felt like momentum, the original plan, profitability first, then expansion, went straight out the window.
The discipline disappeared the second it looked like a wave.
Summer 2015, Chicago. 3 buildings, then 25 locations across the city center. In 2016, they raised another $2.25 million and expanded to Washington, D.C., June 2017, New York.
So in 2 years, they went from 1 building in Boston to 3 cities.
On borrowed money. The founders who said they didn't want VC dynamics were now deep into investor-funded expansion, which is exactly the pressure they'd set out to avoid.
And what started breaking first?
Chicago. Their general manager was an experienced real estate operator, which sounds great until you realize he wanted written instructions for everything. And Baroo had no instructions because the model had never actually been documented.
Right, if you're scaling, you need it written down like a franchise. 25 locations, 3 staff each, that's 75 people trained on something that doesn't exist on paper.
And the deeper problem, that manager assumed the model was already validated. He joined a company that looked like it was in execution mode when it was still in validation mode, so he couldn't get answers that nobody had yet.
That's a brutal mismatch.
DC broke differently. The Trump administration change triggered a mass exodus of federal employees who were a big part of the customer base, and the buildings were scattered across the city, so walkers lost hours in dead time between appointments.
And underneath all of this, the technology?
That's the quiet killer. Baroo was fundamentally an IT business, booking, shift management, resident communication, logistics, and they didn't have the software. All they had was a licensed third-party app with bad UX that clients couldn't even figure out.
You cannot run 25 locations across 3 cities on an app people can't use.
Then the staffing model caved in, and it caved in because of a decision that sounded principled. Hyde hired dog walkers as employees on payroll, not contractors, unlike competitors Rover and Wag. The logic was less turnover, better training, more professional service.
Good principle in theory?
In practice, $500 to train each employee, payable whether or not any orders existed. And because they were paid hourly, a walker could linger with a friendly dog and show up late to a difficult one with zero financial consequence.
So the pay structure quietly worked against the service quality.
And that fed straight into burnout. Turnover hit 120% a year. The best walkers were pulling 12-hour shifts. And in Hyde's own words, we were burning out our best workers and burning through our money.
And at that point, the high-touch service, the entire reason anyone chose Baroo over a random walker, was already gone.
Completely gone. Clients couldn't request their preferred walker, couldn't add an unscheduled walk. Every slot was full because they were opening 25 locations at once. The thing that made Baroo special was the first thing they lost the moment they scaled.
And the concierges in the buildings, the people who were supposed to recommend Baroo to residents, weren't actually doing it.
No incentive for them either, so the growth engine and the service quality broke at the same time from the same root, scaling before any of it was built to scale. The numbers tell the rest. First half of 2017, $600,000 in revenue against $800,000 in operating losses. The forecast for the next 6 months had revenue up 50%. And losses still at $700,000.
So even with growth, they can't get near break-even.
And that's when the board turned. One angel investor started publicly questioning Hyde's competence. And once one person does that, everyone else looks around, decides the room is toxic, and pulls back.
And investors all talk to each other.
Which is exactly what sank the rescue. A VC that had been preparing to lead the Series A walked away specifically because of the board dynamics. January 2018, 3 months of cash left. They opened sale talks, 3 deals, all fell through. February 2018, Baroo closed. So, was any of this avoidable? They did customer research, they ran an MVP, they surveyed the market. On paper, they did everything right.
But the research measured the wrong thing. Enthusiasm for the idea, not willingness to switch, and the MVP that looked like validation was really just those 3 anomalies wearing a costume.
To catch that, you'd have to stop at the peak of things going well and ask, who exactly are these first customers and why are they really here?
Which is almost impossible in the moment. Nobody launches an investigation into their own success.
Second question, is Hyde to blame? She had the right plan from the start, reach profitability in Boston, then grow on her own cash, and she abandoned it herself.
I'd push back on calling that a character flaw. When you're riding early success, slowing down to ask, is this actually what I think it is, takes a discipline almost nobody has in that moment. The world feels wide open.
That's fair. And the co-founder dynamic didn't help. When the whole team is charging forward, the founder has to project calm and certainty, and the same filter that stops everyone panicking is the one that blocks the real warning signals.
Even at slower, self-funded growth, the same trap might have caught her, just at smaller scale. The rate of growth was the mistake no matter whose money paid for it.
With slower growth, she'd at least have had time to learn from the mistakes and survive to the next round. Third question, what actually killed it? Bad idea.
No, the idea was sound.
Weak team?
Partly, but it was a capable team making specific mistakes, not an incompetent one.
The real cause was the anomalously strong start, 3 coincidences at once that gave them the false confidence to abandon the one strategy that could have worked. Boston was never brought to profitability, and that was supposed to be the whole foundation.
And there's a survivor bias layer under all of it. We only ever hear the stories where a founder believed hard and it worked. The ones who believed just as hard and still died, we never hear those. That's the dataset problem behind every just believe in yourself startup myth.
So let's give it a name, because you'll see it everywhere once you know it. Call it the false positive trap, when a lucky launch fakes product market fit and you scale the luck instead of the business.
The false positive trap. Baroo is the rare case where the right strategy existed from day one, the founder knew it, and the company still died because success walked in too early and lied.
That's all for today. If you've got a lucky win right now that you can't fully explain, that's your cue to go investigate it. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode of Startup Talks.